الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون. وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون. وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم 2 فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون. قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغن عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق رسوله الكريم. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بفضل الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله أجمعين محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين، واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: وما أموالكم ولا أولادكم بالتي تقربكم عندنا زلفى إلا من آمن وعمل صالحا فأولئك لهم جزاء الضعف بما عملوا وهم في الغرفات آمنون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, nor your wealth or your children are things that bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather, whoever has faith and does good deeds, these are the ones that have double the reward. Double the reward. And they will be within the chambers of paradise. So, in discussing the topic of tonight, is the world inherently evil? Before we begin to discuss such a concept, there's a little bit of a disclaimer that I would like to put forward. Because a lot of the time when I discuss the world and the hayat al-dunya, many people imagine that this means we should not participate in the worldly life. And I've been told before that you sort of demotivate people from doing anything within this world. And so ultimately, it's not wrong to follow your dreams in this world. It's not wrong, but you don't need somebody to come and tell you. You know, motivational speakers, biggest rip-off ever. Because they come and they motivate you to whatever you want already. You run for it already. You don't need somebody to tell you. We all vie for this world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decorated wealth and children and everything, and we run towards this. We don't need somebody to tell us, oh, get up and stand straight and make your bed and go make some money. You'll want to run and make this money. And you probably know ways to do it much better than I do. But the issue is, it's not bad and it's not haram for us to have wealth. It's not bad for you to be educated, to go and learn and to understand and be the best at what it is you're going to be. Rahimallah mra'in asna'a fa'atqan. The Holy Prophet says, may Allah have mercy on whosoever does something or embarks on something and then does it properly to perfection. That we should do it, whatever it is that we're doing, correctly the first time. Spend that extra effort on it. These are lessons that you might think you already know this, but many people don't understand this concept. That if you're going, for example, to study, go all the way. You finish your degree, go get a master's. If you can get into the master's program. You can get into the master's program, move on. Whatever it is that you're going to do, try and be the best that you can be at it. You gain wealth, this is not a bad thing. And this is why I just want to give this disclaimer before I talk about the dunya, because what I'm going to say is not what I want to say. It's actually based on a narration of Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi alayh, and he speaks about the dunya. And it's something that's very important for us to understand as a reminder. So this man was sitting in front of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, and he was talking about al-aghniya. He began to say all these bad things about the rich people. You know, normal topic of conversation. Sometimes we don't have the wealth or the money, so we'll turn around and we'll begin to badmouth them. Like the typical, oh, look at that nice house. Clearly he must have got it from drugs, because I do the same thing and I don't make that much money. Or, for example, whatever it is. So this man was saying, oh, this rich Shia and he's loaded and he's that. And the Imam al-Sadiq said to him, iskut. Basically, be quiet, stop. So he became quiet. He says, فَإِنَّ الْغِنَى إِذَا كَانَ وُصُولًا لِرَحِمِهِ بَارًا بِإِخْوَانِهِ أَضْعَفَ اللَّهُ لَهُ لَأَجْرَ ضَعْفَيْنِ لَإِنَّ اللَّهَ يَقُولُ وَمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَلَا أَوْلَادُكُمْ. The verse I said in the beginning. He says to him, be quiet. For if this man, with this wealth that he has, He connects with his relatives. Silat al-Rahim. Silat al-Rahim isn't Merry Christmas. It's not how you doing, happy holidays. Silat al-Rahim is this guy needs money, I give him. My cousin needs a loan, I give him. My nephew needs some money for something, I give him. This is what Silat al-Rahim is. I have money and I have the ability to give, I give. I help those around me. I have poor relatives, I give them. I don't leave them for need. This is Silat al-Rahim. And he says, and if he is good to his brethren, so he's good to Islamic brothers, Allah has given him a vast house, so he entertains, he invites his brothers over. I won't come, don't invite me. But he invites his brothers over to come. He makes food and feeds his brethren. This is what Islam is about. Islam isn't about having this bank account. So he says, أَضْعَفَ اللَّهُ لَهُ الْأَجْرِ ضَعْفَيْنِ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will double his reward. So Imam al-Sadiq says to him, be quiet. This verse in the Quran says that not your children nor your wealth will bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, rather your faith and your good deeds. And if you have wealth and you do good, you get double the reward. Why? Because the wealth in its essence is a test. As the old proverb or anecdote says, if you have $5 and somebody wants $1, it's upsetting. Imagine having 5 million and someone wants 1 million. It's pretty hard. So ultimately, wealth is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. And I'm saying this as a disclaimer, so people don't say, oh, you know, that I'm supposed to be impoverished. No. We have a hadith that speak about both, but tonight's discussion isn't about wealth and it's not about poverty. However, I'll give you a small anecdote about the dangers of being wealthy, because it's a test. And surely you've heard this. If you have, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So it's narrated of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. He says that a man came in the presence of Rasulullah and he had clean clothes, looked wealthy, was wearing expensive clothing. So at the time he walks in and he looks all neat and everything. This was obviously, as it is today, a sign of wealth. For when he sat down, a poor man came and sat next to him. When he sat, it's as if I think his cloak was under the thigh of the poor man, so the rich man pulled his cloak, put it together, you know, like, get away from me, lower class. So he didn't say that, but he brought his cloak towards him and he sat. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says to him, أَخِفْتَ أَنْ يَمَسَّكَ مِنْ فَقْرِهِ شَيْءٍ. He says, are you afraid that his poverty might become contagious? That you will gain some of his poverty? He says, La. No. He says, are you afraid that he will take some of your wealth because he's sitting so close to you? And he says to him, no. And then he says, then why are you afraid? He says, are you afraid from his dirty clothes, that they will dirty your clean clothes? He says, no. So he says, the Prophet says to him, why did you pull your cloak away like this? He says, oh Prophet of Allah, oh Messenger of Allah. He says, I have a qareen. And I have this, it's like a companion. A qareen is a companion, but it's a metaphysical companion. It's not something that it's a person. But sometimes people have like a waswas. It's like having a companion. A waswas is this invisible guy that tells you your wudu is not right, do it again. Oh, this is tahir. No, it's not, wash it again. You think it's tahir now, wash it again. And you just continue to do that. Or you continue to do ghusl. Or you continue to do wudu. That's a qareen. Some of the qareen, sometimes you have a qareen that talks, just like that voice in your head that tells you to what, but it's an actual qareen, but the essence of the meaning is like a companion. This companion tells you, don't spend your money. You're about to pay to the poor, no, you're going to lose all your money. The economy is not good. Keep it saved, pack it away, whatever it is. This is so he says, I have a qareen that makes, he says, يُزَيِّن لِي كُلَّ قَبِيحٍ وَيُقَبِّحْ لِي كُلَّ حَسَنٍ. He says that he makes everything bad look good to me, and he makes everything good look bad to me. He says, however, I have gifted half my wealth to this poor man. So the poor man says, I don't want it. The Prophet says to him, do you accept this? He says, I don't want it. He says, why? He says, I'm afraid that I will also get the same qareen that he has if I get this sort of money. Do you understand? So there's a responsibility there. This poor man obviously had his dignity, and he was offended because he was put down by the rich man. So ultimately, by having this wealth, you have a responsibility. Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi alayh, he says that, Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. he says that it is obligatory upon people who have wealth to feed the hungry, to feed the poor. For he says, whenever there is anyone that is impoverished in the world, it's bima mutti'a fi ghani, that a rich person has used it for enjoyment. This is why there is poverty in the world. Simple as that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set up a system like this, and inshallah we will get to that. Finally, when they ask Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam about what is the definition of wealth. So he says, they ask him what is the definition of wealth. He says, قلت أمانيك والرضا بما يكفيك. He says to have small wishes and hopes, or little wishes, few wishes and hopes, and to be content with what you have. Now this is important because the term wealth or the term ghina in Arabic means needless, basically, and I'm sure you've heard this before. It means needless. And generally when someone is needless, that means they're self-sufficient, basically. Obviously Allah is the sustainer, but we're self-sufficient that I have enough wealth that when a bill comes in, I don't have to wonder how am I going to pay it in installments, or how am I going to budget around this. That you have that money, bill comes in, you pay the money, and everything's still fine. You pay your rent, your mortgage, whatever it is. This is our understanding of it. So when they ask Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says to have fewer hopes. What does this mean? Fewer hopes within this dunya. Because this dunya is notorious for breaking hopes. It's notorious for taking away your hopes. You could have all the money in the world, you could have everything. Someone mentioned the other day about that soccer player. He said to me, he has everything, so much money. But when he missed out on winning the World Cup, he couldn't even stand and face anyone. He ran into the locker room and started crying. Like the same as a 6-year-old that loses a game on the weekend will walk inside and cry. Simple as that. But he has everything else. Think about it. And we imagine that money will make us happy, all right? And this guy, that's it. He's missed out on this. It's gone forever. He can never get this again. It's finished. He couldn't win the World Cup for his country, and perhaps the best World Cup that's ever happened since the beginning of the World Cup. I was going to say in a century, but I don't think it's been around for a century. Right, Sheikh? No, it hasn't. Okay. And so the point of this issue is the Imam is saying, have little hope in this dunya so you don't get disappointed. And this is actually really important. Now, when I said before, follow your dreams, of course, follow your dreams. You want to do something, go and do it. But don't imagine by you doing this, it's a get-rich-quick scheme. In fact, the majority of people, that their businesses flourish, really they like what they do and the money sort of comes in as a side thing because al-arzaq biyadillah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates conditions for you to be able to make that sort of wealth. And how many an engineer with a master's degree earns less than with all due respect, a tiler or a plumber, right? Or an electrician, with all due respect. This is the thing we see. This is in this country, this is what it is. The reason I say this is because somebody that has to study to that level, it's quite difficult work. But somebody, for example, that wants to get a trade, it is difficult, but it's not as mentally straining as this. Physically, definitely it's straining. But it's not as straining as this. And generally, in the order of things, professions are supposed to be higher paid, but subhanallah. And sometimes there is some professionals that are making massive amounts of money. But ultimately, it comes down, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you your rizq. So what I'm trying to say here basically is, whatever I say about the dunya, don't let it turn you off life completely, but let it give you an idea of clarity in this world and an understanding of this world, because this is the purpose of tonight's talk, inshallah, to give us an understanding of the purpose of this world. There's a narration that says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to Nabi Dawood, he says, وَضَعْتُ الْغِنَى فِي الْقَنَاعَةِ وَهُمْ يَطْلِبُونَهُ فِي كَثْرَةِ الْمَالِ فَلَا يَجِدُونَهُ. He says that I have placed wealth in contentment. But people look at it Wealth as in needlessness through contentment, but people look for it through accumulating money. And they will never find it through that way. And this is true. If you stop and you have a conversation with yourself about what you want to achieve in life and what you see as success, you will begin to understand the things that you are vying for can't be bought. The things that you actually want can't be bought. You can pay somebody to love you. You can pay someone to love you. You can pay someone to make you meals. You can pay somebody to clean your house. You can pay somebody to drive your car. You can do this with money. But are you telling me a 5-star Michelin chef is going to cook something like your mother cooks for you? Absolutely not. I guarantee it. When your mother cooks something for you, it's full of love and it's from her heart. And she wants you to eat it. Michelin restaurants? 100%. Trust me, someone that's worked in catering. When I was young, I worked in catering. I worked with some of the highest class chefs. And for the people that work in catering, I think they understand. When your mother makes you something, it's hard. I swear, from myself, if my mother makes me a cup of tea, there's no tea in the world I can drink like that cup of tea. Or my mother makes me, whatever it is, food, breakfast, there's no breakfast in the world that tastes like the touch of the mother. And the mother sits here and she's happy. She wants to see you eat. It's not she's waiting for the tip to tell you, oh, here it is. You can pay somebody to drive you, but it's not like your father driving somewhere or taking you somewhere. Look at the care that he takes. I hardly think your Uber driver is going to put his hand to block you if he goes into an accident. Right? He'll be going straight into crash mode, seeing how far you fly. Hopefully he can get the footage out so he might get some likes on TikTok or something. So on and so forth. Could you imagine overnight you became a billionaire? Do you think you could even attend this center? Honestly. Do you think you could? How would you know who would be truthful to you? How would you know who would be really your friend or who's just, trying to pander up to you? It's true. And this is the reality that billionaires live. That's why you see them flying around on private jets. That's why you see them buying whole suburbs so they can live in the middle of it, and they have all of that as a barrier. Because they can't have anyone around them because they don't have any real relationships, and yet this is all that they've been looking for, like we spoke about 4 weeks ago, if you remember, about wanting to be loved. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And so, now that I've sort of given you an idea that it's not haram to be rich or wealthy, and in fact, if you use your money for good, you get double the reward. Because that in itself is a test. I can easily say, so many people, you hear them say, that if God lets me win $20 million, half of it I'll spend on building a mosque. As my brother always says to me, he says, how much are they spending now off their income? 2% on building a mosque? 5%? 10%? Who does 50-50? Nobody. Or maybe some of you do. I don't know. I don't do 50-50. So if I get 10 million, I'm not giving half. Full stop. For the person that gives and he has is different to the person that just dreams. He's in fantasy land. And he says that I just give or I just pay. So we come back to the core question, which is the world inherently evil? Because we look at the world today, and all you see on your news feeds is all of the oppression that happens all over the world. The oppression that's happening in Palestine, the quiet oppression that's happening in Syria, in Yemen, the oppression that's happening on social media. For example, Ukraine. The people of Ukraine are just being used as fodder. They just send them weapons and they just go to fight, and these guys are just dying. They're getting conscripted for nothing. For what? For companies, for the arms companies to make so much profit. At the end of the day, wherever your political alliances are or your religious differences, these are still human beings that are being killed. And even though that's on the stage, we look at everything else. Nearly all of Africa. And all of these difficulties that you see, you think, oh my God, this world is evil. You think to yourself, how could I even bring a child into this evil world? We look at our schools. I don't know if you saw the dramas that have been going on in that high school overseas. There was a school teacher, a transgender school teacher, that wears a massive prosthetic chest to school. And so they're taking him to court to say that, you can't wear this. This is like, what is this? And it's like ridiculous. It's like, anyway. But the point is, I'm saying you think about that and you say, I'm going to send my child into these schools and they're going to learn how to be human beings by looking at their teacher and what their teacher does. Is this world inherently evil? Or some people, they try and do the right thing. Good guys, honest. They're doing the right thing at work and it doesn't work out. Why? Because they're doing the right thing. And how many a whistleblower do we see? Of these whistleblowers, many of them in Australia, the ones that, how did we get those videos, for example, where the SAS soldier is killing that guy in the field, and the guy was doing tasbih. He was unarmed. And he just shot him on the floor. He just shot him. First he moved the dog away so the dog won't get hurt, and then he shot him. All right, things like this. The people that dobbed on this, they're facing trial now. You know that. There's a lot of people that are in the Australian army that are they were in the ex-Australian army and they're actually on trial and they're probably going to put them in prison for a long time. But these are all secret trials. The people that release these videos, like WikiLeaks and all the rest of it, so you look at it and you say, is this world inherently evil? Did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create this world and just allow it to go into chaos? Or sometimes I try my go at the world. They tell me, study hard, so I study hard. And you get the marks and you get the marks. And you go into university and you go into university. And then when you get out, you get a job that's not what you thought you were going to be doing. You thought you were going to be building spaceships. Instead, you're making sure the corners are at right angles and you're not getting paid, or you thought you were going to be a blacksmith. And instead, you're just filling bags of nuts and bolts. Or you thought you were going to be, whatever it is, an astronaut. But instead, you're like a glorified bus driver, flying a passenger plane that automatically does everything on its own, yeah? And you thought you were going to do something really big, and this is how it turned out. Is this dunya just evil? And when people hear this and they see this, they get upset. And they say, you know what? This dunya sucks. This dunya is no good. I want out of this dunya. And so one day a man is saying this. He walks past Imam Ali alayhi salam and he says, this dunya, it's the worst. So he started saying bad things about the dunya. So Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says, ما بال أقوام يذمون الدنيا. He says, what is it with these people that speak bad about the dunya? This narration, in fact, it's narrated so widely. There are so many different narrations for it, but I just chose one of them. And the format that it's in is quite interesting. And inshallah, we'll get to that in a second. So he says, أيها الذام للدنيا المغتر بغرورها. He says to him, oh, you who disses the dunya, who speaks bad about the dunya, you're the one who has been deluded by the dunya. المخدوع بأباطيلها. You have been tricked by its fallacies. One that turns around and says, oh, the dunya, it's the worst. He says, you have been deluded by Imam Ali alayhi salam. He says, you are the one that has been tricked by its fallacies. He says, أتغتر بالدنيا ثم تذمها ثم تذمها. He says, أنت المتجرم عليها أم هي المتجرمة عليك. First, you fall to the temptations of this dunya. Are you the one that has committed a crime against the dunya, or has the dunya committed a crime against you? This is a big call. So the Imam says, what is it with these people? They speak bad about the dunya, they diss the dunya, and yet they're the ones that got deluded by it. And they're the ones that got tricked. They got tricked by its fallacies. These are clear fallacies. He says, so you go and you get tempted by the dunya, and then you turn around and you say, you know what? The dunya is the worst place. This is like, let me give you an example before we get to the next part. It's like somebody that's speeding all the time, and then he gets caught by the police doing a ridiculous speed. And they pull him over and he starts saying, God damn the police, they are so racist, so on and so forth. But that fine perhaps saved his life. That fine perhaps changes his life, honestly. And you might hate that policeman and you hate the system that made you pay that fine. That could have changed your whole life. It's like the guy that decides to go to the nightclub for the first time ever. And he walks in and doesn't have a collared shirt, so the bouncer says, "No, you're not coming in, son." He says, "God, this guy's racist, out of my way." And then the bouncer punches him. And he gets injured and he goes home, but he never ends up going into the nightclub. That bouncer just did him the best favor in the world. He walked home with a punch rather than walking home with a million sins and being drunk. But in his head, he's like, "I'm going to go shoot this bouncer, destroyed my life." He just did you the greatest favor. It's like that really difficult teacher at school where you're scared. You want to make sure you bring your homework when you come in. Because if you don't, they're going to make a big deal out of it. You probably hate that teacher, but perhaps that teacher is the best thing for you. And the thing is, they're telling you something that's clear, but you can't see it at the time. So the Imam is telling him this. He says, أَتَغْتَرُّ بِالدُّنْيَا ثُمَّ تَضُمُّهَا. He says, أَأَنْتَ الْمُتَجَرِّمُ عَلَيْهَا أَمْ هِيَ الْمُتَجَرِّمَةُ عَلَيْكَ مَتَى اسْتَهْوَتْكَ أَمْ مَتَى غَرَّتْكَ. He says, when did the dunya desire you? When did it delude you? Show me. Where did the dunya say that I'm looking for this guy, I'm looking for Ali Mehdi, and I want to give him all this money and women? It's like, when people look and they go, this actor, he's evil. I know why we guys say it, the married guys, obviously, you have to put up the front in front of the wife. But realistically, you look at them and you say, oh my God, look how silly this guy is, look how dumb he is. But yet you've never been in that situation where this is all coming at you. And is that what happened? Did they come and knock on your door and say, look, sell your religion and we're going to give you millions of dollars? You say, I'll be a Christian for a while, or I'll be a Buddhist for a while, that's fine. No, they don't do that. They don't even do that. In fact, they don't do anything. It's there. If you want it, come get it. You try and get it and you fail and fall on your face and you go, oh, this dunya is the worst thing. I just fell flat on my face. Isn't that correct? So the Imam, he says to him, Mata gharratk. He says to him, Afwan, Mata stahwatk, am mata gharratk. He says to him, بِمَصَارِعِ آبَائِكَ مِنَ الْبِلَةِ. He says, did it trick you by showing you that how your forefathers perished? Where are our fathers? Where are our grandfathers? Where are our great-great-great-grandfathers? Didn't they all die? Some of them not spectacularly. They weren't martyrs or were shot. They just died like everyone dies. A heart attack, or they grew old and they died. This is what bila means. Bila means that they just perished. Is this how the world tricked you? Imam Ali says to him. And then he says to him, Am bimadaji'i ummahatika tahta thara. Or is it in the resting place of your mothers underneath the dirt? Your grandmother and your great-great-grandmother and you in another way. Nothing spectacular. Is this how the dunya fooled you and tricked you? And then the Imam says, Kam allalt bikaffayk, wa kam marrath biyadayk. He says, how many a sick person have you went to give, to help while they were sick with your own two hands? He says, wa kam marrath biyadayk. He says, and how many of them did you nurse with your own two hands? Tabtaghi lahum al-shifa wa tastawsifu lahum al-atibba. It says that you want them, you pray that they get better, and you start saying to them, you know what, you should see this doctor. Oh, that disease, I've got the best cure for this. I read about this in the internet. Try this, fry this up, put 3 onions, some garlic, and you try whatever it is that you can try. Vitamin C, the seeds, the cyanide from the apricot seeds. All of these things, you try them, and this is true because you really want them to get better. And then he says, غَدَاةً لَا يُغْنِي عَنْهُمْ دَوَاؤُكَ وَلَا يُجْدِي عَلَيْهِمْ بُكَاؤُكَ. He says, however, so quickly they passed, and your medicine was of no use to them, nor was your crying of any use to them. لَمْ يَنْفَعْ. He says, لَمْ يَنْفَعْ أَحَدَهُمْ إِشْفَاقُكَ. Nor did you feeling sorry for them benefit them. وَلَمْ تُصْعَفْ فِيهِ بِطَلِبَتِكَ. He says, and even when you rushed to their aid and asked people, can you do this? You know, my friend is dying and he needs surgery, or my relative is dying, he needs something, whatever it is, we need it. Oh, there's a new technique in Germany, let's do it. How much money does it cost? We'll get the money, it doesn't matter. This is what the Imam is saying, and how many times have you done this? وَلَمْ تَدْفَعْ عَنْهُ بِقُوَّتِكَ وَقَدْ مَثَّلَتْ لَكَ بِهِ الدُّنْيَا نَفْسَكَ. Says you had no ability, all your strength, But what you were watching there isn't this guy that was getting sick and dying. You were watching a play by the dunya. The dunya gave you this play. It showed you that this is what you're going to go through. Imagine that. You know when we hold a dead body and we take it to bury it and we just think about, oh my God, we're going to put him down, and then I'll go back, you know what, I'm feeling a bit hungry, maybe I'll go and get some lunch or something like that. You're supposed to be thinking, this is how it's going to be me. I'm going to be in this beer. I'm going to be in this nash. And then he says to him, he says, قَدْ مَثَلَتْ لَكَ بِهِ الدُّنْيَا نَفْسَكَ وَبِمَصْرَعِهِ مَصْرَعَكَ. And by his death, it's actually your death. And then he begins. He says, إِنَّ الدُّنْيَا دَارُ صِدْقٍ لِمَنْ صَدَقَهَا وَدَارُ عَافِيَةٍ لِمَنْ فَهِمَ عَنْهَا وَدَارُ غِنًى لِمَنْ تَزَوَّدَ مِنْهَا. He says, this dunya is a place of truth for whoever is truthful with it. The dunya tells you immediately, you're not welcome. These elites, we have a club. What's that? You got the best marks? Sorry, you can't study heart surgery. Try something else. What's that? You got great marks? You can't enter this university. This university is for a certain type of people. That's what happens. This is the reality. Because you get the marks and everything and you're still subject to interviews and you're still subject to discretion. Whose discretion? Whose discretion? To get these connections and to go into these avenues, you need particular connections. However, if you're truthful with the dunya, then the dunya is truthful with you. It shows you how many people's hopes and desires have just been torn up by illness, by death, by just not making it. This is what the dunya is. Because the one that's honest with the dunya knows what the dunya is about. How is it that when we hear about the Anbiya and the Imams and the difficulties that they went through, never did they turn and say, oh Allah, you've stuffed me up this time. You've ruined me. You've forsaken me. Never. The Anbiya don't say this. Because they understood what it really is for. I'm glad you find humor in this lecture. I was trying to add some jokes, it wasn't working, but these must be quite funny to you. You must tell me afterwards, inshallah, what you found funny about death. And he says, وَدَارُ عَافِيَةٍ لِمَنْ فَهِمَ عَنْهَا. And it's a place of well-being for somebody who understands it. And he says, وَدَارُ عَافِيَةٍ لِمَنْ فَهِمَ عَنْهَا. It's a place of well-being for the one who understands it. وَدَارُ غِنًى لِمَنْ تَزَوَّدَ مِنْهَا وَدَارُ مَوْعِدَةً لِمَنْ اتَّعَظَ بِهَا. He says this is a place of admonition for whoever takes admonition for it. It's a place of wealth for whoever takes piety from it. Taqwa. That if you act in a way where you fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of this is coming with you to the hereafter. But nothing in this world you can take with you. So many words can be said about this. It is a place of admonition. And it's a place of examples. How many a time do we see, may Allah not make us an example for the people after us, a negative example. May Allah never make us that negative example. How many do you hear about stories about, oh, this guy, wallah, his father's the biggest mu'min, his mother's the biggest mu'min, and look where he ended up. Doing this, and look where he is. I've got a funny one for you. There was a lady, and she said, and this is just to break it because it's quite solemn. She said that it's okay if you bottle... She said, my son got a face tattoo. So it's okay if you bottle feed your children. Don't stress too much. Anyway. So, this is a place for admonition. It's a place where you find lessons. These are the lessons. That it's the joke means that sometimes you try so hard to do the right thing, and then your kid goes and does something so ridiculously stupid. And it hurts you that all the effort that you put in. Have you ever heard a mother say, "Da'an hal halibet," that this milk that I used, they should have just, you know. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ahli Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ahli Muhammad. And so, you don't ever want to be the lesson. You don't want to be, oh, I remember that guy who used to pray at the masjid all the time and he was doing all the right thing. Do you know where he is now? Let me show you his Instagram. Do you remember that girl that was wearing hijab? Look, she's not wearing hijab. Let me show you her Instagram. These things that happen, it's scary. These are examples. Allah shows you these examples through this. And it's a long narration. I don't know if I can go through all of it, but just let me give you the gist of, inshallah, what I wanted to talk about so we don't do it over 2 nights. So then he says, he starts speaking about how excellent the dunya is. You know, this earth. There's an interesting study I was listening to today. When I was researching, I ended up falling into this, if you want to call it a rabbit hole. It was a rabbit hole of wisdom. He spoke about the earth and the importance of the ard. And the manner that he speaks about it, it's almost impossible for there to be other life forms anywhere else. That this world isn't nothing. This earth, the ard, was selected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I'm pretty sure the etymology of the word earth is from the Arabic word, ard. Not 100% sure, you should research it, but ard and earth, very similar, because obviously lard, they wouldn't have had anything for it, so they just put whatever letter they feel like, TH probably. Earth, ard. The ard, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala selected it, and this is what Imam Ali says about this ard. It's special. Allah didn't select Saturn. He didn't select Jupiter. He didn't select, what's it called, Kepler 22. He didn't choose Kepler 22. He chose Earth. And this is what he says. He says, Masjid Ahibba'illahi Azza wa Jal. That this is the place where the ones whom Allah loves prayed. They didn't pray on Saturn. They didn't pray on Jupiter. They didn't pray on Mars. Allah chose Earth for them to pray. And then he says, وَمُصَلَّى مَلَائِكَةِ اللَّهِ. That it is the place where the angels of Allah have prayed. And it's mahbat wahyillah. And it's the place where the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has come down. وَمَتْجَرْ أَوْلِيَاءِ اللَّهِ. That it is the place of trade for the ones who are near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This world. This is what this dunya is. This dunya is actually a great place. He says, اكتسبوا فيها الرحمة وربحوا فيها الجنة فمن ذا يذمها وقد آذنت ببينها ونادت بفراقها ونعت نفسها. The Imam says to him that this is the place where Allah's beloved ones worship, where His angels have come down and prayed, where His revelation has come down. And this is not in the narration. But this is not in this narration what I'm about to say. This is the place Allah chose for the Imam al-Hujjah Ajallah Faraj Sharif to rise and bring justice and equity after it has been filled with tyranny. For this is something, or the earth is something that's blessed. And then he says that this is the place where the guardians, the new ones of Allah, use as trade. In it they gained the mercy of Allah, and in it they won paradise. He says, so who dares basically turn around and say this dunya is the worst? If it's the worst, Allah wouldn't have given it that position. And then he begins to tell him that how can you blame the dunya and say bad things about the dunya when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this dunya, as he said, وَقَدْ آذَنَتْ بِبَيْنِهَا. It has screamed out and cried out. بِبَيْنِهَا means بِزَوَالِهَا, means that it's going to perish. وَنَادَتْ بِفِرَاقِهَا وَنَحَتْ نَفْسَهَا وَأَهْلَهَا فَمَثَّلَتْ لَهُمْ بِبَلَائِهَا الْبَلَاءِ. This dunya, the whole time it's telling you this. That the wealth that you have wouldn't have reached you if someone else was able to keep it, right? But they had to die for you to get that position. When they died, then you got that position. You got the inheritance and you moved forward. So the dunya is showing you that, look, these people are dying. The dunya shows you the wars that happen. The dunya shows you how quickly you can go from health to sickness in one moment. How did this happen? I just woke up and I felt a bit sick, and that's the rest of the story. From happiness to sadness, the Imam says that this dunya is telling everyone, and it's even bemoaning. نَعَتْ نَفْسَهَا وَأَهْلَهَا. It's bemoaning the fact that it's going to die, and we're all going to die. Does not the world continually do this? These mass death events that we see, and the fact that the dunya is so dynamic, or rather the better word is unstable. ونادت بفراقها ونادت نفسها وأهلها فمثلت لهم ببلائها البلاء. It manifested the trials in this world. But day by day, isn't that all you see is the trials? Alhamdulillah for all the benefits we have. But the trial upon trial doesn't stop. Alhamdulillah, we have moments of peace and quiet, which the Imam mentions here. He says, بِبَلَائِهَا الْبَلَاء وَشَوَّقَتْهُمْ بِسُرُورِهَا إِلَى سُرُورٍ. That it made them feel longing for paradise because it showed you elements or things that sort of describe paradise. For example, in paradise, there will be fruits. There will be food. So Allah showed us here how food is enjoyable in this world. And it is. Food is enjoyable. Michelin restaurants are all right, Hajj. Food is enjoyable here. Because in the Jannah, we're going to have food like this food that's showing the bisurur has surur. So it takes from happiness to happiness. Excuse me, I won't be long, inshallah. He says, راحت بعافية وابتكرت بفجيعة. Subhanallah. This dunya, all the well-being and all the good memories are things of the past. They're gone. They pass you. You look back and say, that were the days. They were the days. I was going to be, when I was with my parents. They were the days when I had no bills. They were those summers or those whatever. And immediately they're gone. راحت بعافية وابتكرت بفجيعة. That all of a sudden you see every day, for example, Sayyid Sadiq Ruhani, rahmatullahi alayh, قدس الله سره. This big alam deen, huge marja, alam deen just passes away and it's nothing. It's nothing. It's a few WhatsApp statuses and many more of these ulama, for example. This dunya, immediately it shows you all of these atrocities that come, inshallah. 4 minutes that Allah rad, sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He says, فَذَمَّهَا رِجَالٌ غَدَاتِ النَّدَامَ وَحَمِدَهَا آخَرُونَ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ ذكرتهم الدنيا فتذكروا وحدثتهم فصدقوا ووضعتهم فاتضعوا. He says there's 2 types of people in this dunya. Some of them are the ones that run for the dunya and they don't get it. Like the Imam said, it's not like it's coming after you anyway. We run to it. Has anyone read 1984 by George Orwell? Anyone? Show of hands. 1984. Hajj Mufid has read it, I know, but 1984 by George Orwell is a dystopian story, all right? And it's actually very interesting if you want to learn a little bit about Western culture and basically what's happening today. It's a good story to have a look at. 1984 by George Orwell. He speaks about a dystopian future. This was written back in the 40s. I think it was just after World War II, or the 50s, sorry. And he speaks about how people in the future, in the 60s or the 70s, 1984, in the 80s, will have within their houses a television. You picked that one up. They'll have a television in their house and the government will be basically able to communicate to them. Have you ever heard of the concept of Big Brother? This is where the concept of Big Brother comes in. Big Brother is watching. This is Big Brother is where it comes from. Because they call him Big Brother. So the dear leader is just called Big Brother. Change Big Brother with, POTUS, if you like, or Prime Minister, or whatever you want. He doesn't have a name, it's a position. So Big Brother is a position. And basically, he talks to them through the TV, and wherever you are, you're monitored. Everywhere you go, you're monitored. All your correspondence is monitored. There's cameras everywhere watching you. And anyway, later, obviously it was written in the UK, and London became the most watched city in the world with the amount of CCTV cameras that they have to dissuade crime. But the moral of the story is that this is what they were saying, what was going to be so bad about the future, that you're going to be watched all the time. And somebody commented and said the thing that George Orwell got wrong is that we want to be watched. This is the thing. The dunya is telling you, get away from me. Everything I touch gets destroyed and you say, please give me more. There's a tradition that says when someone who follows the dunya their whole life, nastajiru billah, may Allah protect us from this. Like they follow their desires and they do haram. It says on the first night in their grave, basically a rotting hag will come to them and try and hug them. And they'll say, get away from me, get away from me. She'll say, why do you want to leave me now? Your whole life you wanted me. He says, who are you? She says, I am the dunya. She comes in the form of that, of a rotting old hag. And she comes and says that, here, I'm here for you. This is what you're following. And this is the truth. What are we following? The world itself shows you this, that beauty, for example, can never be reversed. That once you grow old and the beauty goes, it doesn't matter what plastic surgery you do. In fact, we've got to a stage where we just tell them, oh, tell us what beautiful is. As someone said, he said those high cheekbones. No human on earth has those high cheekbones. And yet we want to go get surgery to get those high cheekbones. You know, the massive ones. And so on and so forth. We go and do all sorts of things thinking that these are the standards of beauty, and the dunya is showing, you know, this doesn't work. And that's why what we see, for example, on a daily basis, on social media, it's fake and it's falsified, it's a fallacy. The whole thing is a fallacy. This is what we see. That everything is just fake. They make sure that they use whatever it is that they use, and it's got to the point where people have gone nuts. People have gone nuts. They're no longer attracted to just someone of the opposite gender. It has to be something else, a cyborg. Soon we're going to have cyborgs, it'll be a fetish, for example. I'm not kidding. And this is what it's become. It's become to the point where it's crazy. But anyway, so he's saying these are people that follow the dunya. He says then there's the other type that when they saw the dunya and the dunya reminded them, they remembered. And when the dunya spoke to them, they listened. The dunya said, you know what? It's not worth it. You're going to go and do all of that for what? Yeah, you know what? I'm going to leave big money behind for my kids. Yeah, what do you think your kids are going to do with that money the second you're gone? You'll be lucky if they don't spend it on holiday houses and vehicles and opium. You don't know. You don't know what it is. But you think to yourself that this is what I'm doing. I've secured them. I've set them up. And it's far from that. Nastajiru billah. In fact, something you would have given them in their life to help them with their life, they will love much more than any inheritance. It's not worth it. But that's another topic for discussion. Another topic. But he says they heard, so when they had the opportunity to go, for example, ziyarah, they went ziyarah. When they heard that there's someone poor, they helped. When they heard that someone needs help and I can do something to help them, they helped them because they knew that in the hereafter there's something for them. When they saw that they're in a position of power and they can oppress someone, they didn't oppress because they knew on the day of judgment there's going to be question and answer. He says it gave them admonition and they took the admonition. I just want to tell you one final hadith, inshaAllah, and we'll finish with this. It's very short. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, الدنيا دار ممر لا دار مقر والناس فيها رجلان. He says this dunya is an abode of passing and it's not an abode of settlement. It's not somewhere to stay here forever. It's just somewhere you're just passing through. You're just having a rest stop here. That's all it is. We're passing through. He says, وَالنَّاسُ فِيهَا رَجُلَانِ. And the people in this are two types. There's two types of men in this world, or two types of people in this world. رَجُلٌ بَاعَ فِيهَا نَفْسَهُ فَأَوْبَقَهَا. فَأَوْبَقَهَا sounds like it means that he destroyed himself. That he sold himself and he destroyed himself. He says, وَرَجُلٌ ابتاع نفسه فأعتقها. باع يعني he sold. ابتاع يعني he bought himself. Two types of people. There's sellers and buyers. You either sell yourself for this dunya and you destroy it, or you buy yourself from this dunya. How? With the time and ability that you have on this world to do what's good and to abstain from sin. This dunya, like anything Allah has created, is not inherently evil. Rather, it is something that is marvelous and it is beautiful and it's amazing and it's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala selected, and this is the place where you can achieve what you want for your hereafter. This is the whole purpose of this world, and everything about this world tells you instability. The whole time it's always telling you instability, instability. Everything's instability. But the only thing that you have and the only thing that you can take are the good deeds that you do. Allah created this world as a thing of goodness, something we can take good from. And we see this like I said, through our imams, through our anbiya, through the awliya, the guardians of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When they go through difficulty, what do they say? The Holy Prophet would say, Alhamdulillah ala kulli hal. All praise is due to Allah in whatever situation that we're in. Ridan bi ridak, la ma'buda siwak. I am pleased with what you are pleased with, Ya Allah. There is none worthy of worship other than you. These are the words of the Imams. These are the words of the awliya. The objective of tonight, inshaAllah, is for us to understand this dunya in the correct perspective. And that perspective, it is a place. You want to call it a testing ground, you want to call it an audition, whatever it is that they want to call it. For us to take that lesson, to do whatever good it is that we can do with our families, with our parents, with the people around us, to do the right thing by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so we can gain our hereafter. Because there's nothing in this dunya that's really worth it. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy on our dead. We ask Allah to hasten the reappearance of our holy Imam. We ask Allah to help us against our lower selves in the same way that He helps the righteous of His servants against their lower selves. We ask Allah to have mercy upon all of our deceased and accept all of our deeds, and to not take us from this world until He is pleased with us. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة وأدى ثوابها إلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات. Actually, we should do dua al-faraj, but I know you guys are hanging for a smoker. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك صلواتك عليه وعلى في هذه الساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكن أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين، وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والشهداء ولقضاء الحوائج وشفاء المرضى. رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة مع الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.